I'm hoping that by letting Django say hi at the very beginning of this video, I will be able to film uninterrupted for the rest of the video. So, this is Django. He is cold and he says hi. Okay, it is December the 1st. I'm going to wrap up November. I do have my notes on this other page, so I'm going to be looking this way a little bit, but that's just so I can see what's next to talk about. So first, let's talk about the books that I picked to be on my November TBR. So that was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang, As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner, Fire in His Blood by Ruby Dixon, The Eighth Detective by Alex Pavesi. I'm not sure how to say his last name. Lovely War by Julie Berry. And I said I was going to be finishing up A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, which is the final Wheel of Time book. Then, of course, if you saw my December TBR, you know that I have been trying to work on the In Death series all year. Well, if you've seen a lot of videos this year, you know that as well. But I am trying to finish it up in 2022. So I'll have an update on where I am with that as well. So let's go back and talk about the ones that I said I was going to read on my TBR. I read most of them. I DNF'd 2 of them. I couldn't. Anyway, let's talk about it. First, let's look at As Bright as Heaven. Now, this is a historical fiction book set during the time, let me find out exactly what year, 1918 in Philadelphia when the Spanish flu epidemic broke out. Now, also, there was a war going on during this same time. So what we have is we have the Bright family, and we are following them. I think if you like historical fiction, you will absolutely love this book. It is just dealing with one family's walk through the Spanish flu. What makes it even a little bit more interesting to me is that this family lives at the funeral home, at the mortuary. That's not what it's called either. I don't know what it would have been called. The morgue? That doesn't seem like the right thing either. The funeral parlor? I don't know what the right word is, but the uncle, their dad's uncle, takes them in, and he is the mortician or funeral person. I don't know what words to use for this. But anyway, he brings them in and lets them live with him because there'll be more opportunities in the city than where they were living out before. So they move in to the city, they move in with him, and immediately the Spanish flu epidemic starts. And it is devastating. I mean, it's horrible. So I guess if you have triggers for pandemic type things, maybe you won't like this one. But I think if you're a historical fiction fan, even a small one like me, you would absolutely love this book. However, the love that I felt for this book kind of messed me up going forward because the next one that I tried to read was Lovely War by Julie Berry. And this one is historical fiction, but it's also fantasy. Let me see if they call it magical realism or anything. No, they have fantasy mythology in here. So it's 1917 in this book. Actually, it's only 1917 in parts of this book. We are in World War II for other parts of this book. We meet some gods, literal Greek gods. It is Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and Ares. Okay, Apollo's in it for a second, but anyway, he was in the part I read. What happens is Aphrodite and Ares have snuck off to go have an affair. I mean, I don't know how much sneaking they were doing, but anyway, Hephaestus shows up and he's like, why shouldn't I take you before the gods to have you killed? And Aphrodite's like, I just can't love because I'm the goddess of love. Just like Ares can't fully embrace war and he's the god of war. And so all these things she tries to bring up as evidence. And he was like, then how do you know that you can't love? And she said, because I know what love looks like. So then she goes back and tells him these stories. One's from World War I about this couple that meet and the love that they share. And then there's apparently other stories. I don't know because I didn't get that far. I couldn't. It was entirely too much historical fiction for me. I loved As Bright as Heaven, but I think I was just done. Like, maybe I need to make sure in the future that I schedule only one historical fiction per month unless they're just very different, because I couldn't. And I was like, I don't care. I don't want to do this. And so I just DNF'd it, which I have started allowing myself to do more in the last 2 years. It's been so liberating. But anyway, so I DNF'd Lovely War. Then I thought, okay, I'm going to go a completely different route. Oh, I did tell you guys also that I was saving a spot on my TBR for Amy's book from A Star Reads, and she spun, and we got a color wheel and got the color red. And so the 8th Detective was going to be my red covered book. So I started this one, and I DNF'd it as well. And honestly, I don't even remember anything about it or why I even decided to quit it. I think I just wasn't, I didn't like any of it. Like, I couldn't connect to any of it. And it was going to be too much trouble to try to figure out why I didn't like it and why, I don't know. I just don't even know what it was, but I just could not. This is the part that I remember, is that there was someone who was reading a manuscript that someone else had written, and they were like, but didn't a murder like this take place during this time? And there were so many questions, but we were jumping back from the person reading the manuscript or reading the book or whatever seemed like it was actually happening. And then when the person was in the real world, I couldn't tell what was in the past and what was in the future. And I couldn't tell what was part of the book and what was part of the not book. Like, I don't know. It was just too difficult for me. And maybe I would have done better to do this immersion where I could look at the physical copy of the book and not just audio, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, I wasn't liking it. And I wanted to go on to Fire in His Blood because I thought this one would be completely different from everything else. However, I was waiting for it on Scribd, and the way Scribd works, which I'm going to have a video coming out about that in a couple of weeks, I think. But the way Scribd works is that it sometimes puts books out of reach until you reach your monthly day. And my monthly day is on the 22nd of each month. So I was going to have to wait till November the 22nd before I could read Fire in His Blood because it had been put on hold. So I moved into The Kiss Quotient, which is also a romance and one of the first ones that I wrote on the thing. Okay. I loved this book. Number one thing, it has fake dating trope in it, which is one of my favorite tropes. Now, I'm probably going to get all of these confused because I literally read The Kiss Quotient, followed immediately by The Bride Test, and then followed immediately by The Heart Principle. I read all three of them back to back to back. So I'm not going to try to even divide them up completely because I'm afraid I'm going to get them messed up. But I am going to look over here. In the first book, we are dealing with Stella, and she has Asperger's, and she doesn't really like touching very much. And so she hires an escort whose name is Michael, and she wants him to like help her practice, right? It's called The Kiss Quotient. She's a really big into math and science, and math makes sense to her. And so she's like, let's do this mathematically. So she presents him with like this list of things that she would like to check off the list. Anyway, it was really funny. It was really cute. I really enjoyed it. And it's deeper than just a romance. All of these are. And I think they get deeper as we go through the series. And so that was The Kiss Quotient. It was Stella and Michael's story. And then in The Bride Test, we don't meet him. We heard about him before, but his name is Kai. And it is Michael's cousin. And so Kai also has Asperger's, and his mom has brought someone with her from Vietnam. She went to visit Ho Chi Minh City and brought this girl back to be his bride. And he's like, I'm not doing this. And his mom's like, okay, well, she's going to stay with you for a little while. Just bring her to the weddings that you have going on this summer, and then I'll send her back home if things don't work out. Of course they do. Her name is Esme. It is so cute. I loved his development because he was like, I just don't feel things correctly. And he thought that about himself because he laughed one time or he didn't cry when other people were crying, and someone said to him, you have no feelings. And so now that's become his mantra, is that he has no feelings. And so his brother is really in this one a lot. And he was like, helping him see that he does have feelings, and also Esme at the same time. He was like, well, I feel things for her. Anyway, it was really good and really cute. I really enjoyed it. And I moved right into The Heart Principle, which is his brother's story. So Kai's brother, I don't know why I can't think of his name, Quan. So his brother Quan falls in love in The Heart Principle, and it was just so good. He is dealing with some medical issue trauma that he had, and the violinist in this one, her name is Anna. She is a violinist, and she does a really good job of like playing a piece, and it goes viral, and then she can't play anymore. She can't finish a piece because she's constantly in her head about what's happening and what's going on. And so it was just a really cool look at how her anxiety and her issues are being dealt with by her therapist and what she's going through there. And at the same time, Quan sees things in her and is falling in love with parts of her and learning more about her. And we're learning about Quan and how he's dealing with the stuff in his life. And I love this family. Like, I would read more books about the people in the family and what's going on with them. I really liked it. I got sucked in and I thought, why not go to the next book? See, this is the freedom that I have by not making myself go, well, you've got to read these 25 books this month, and you have no flexibility in that. But I was going through these books and I was like, I have 6 books to read. If I want to read the next 2 books in this series, I can just read them. Nothing's stopping me. So I did. Then I finished the Wheel of Time book. This one was called A Memory of Light, and it was the end. So first of all, there is the longest chapter that I've ever read. In audiobook terms, it is almost the length of a full book. It was over 8 hours on audio for one chapter in this book. It was so funny that it was called The Last Battle, right? This chapter is called The Last Battle. And for 14 books, you have worked your way up to the last battle. You learn very early on in this series that there is a last battle that is coming at some point. And this chapter is called The Last Battle. And Andrew and I are reading it together, and we get to the end of this chapter. And I messaged him and I was like, the battle's not over. Like, we've just gone through 8 hours of this one chapter called The Last Battle, and it ends and the battle is not over. Anyway, it was really funny that we were both like, are you serious? We've worked to get to the last battle and it's not done. Anyway, it is definitely done by the time the book was over. It was so good. It as a whole was an amazing story. It had awfully boring parts in some sections of it. It had incredible characters that we got to know from the very beginning. I have gone now 2 weeks without reading about these people. And I keep thinking to myself when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. Like, I have that moment where I think I'm going to get to read. No, I'm not. So it's been weird, but also fantastic to have it all finally wrapped up and done. Yes, people died that I loved. I messaged Andrew one time and I said, if this certain person, who I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I said, if this person dies, I am rage quitting this book right now. And he messaged me back. He was like, you did not make it through 13 and a half books to quit right here at the end. But I was so scared and so upset that somebody I loved, people that I loved were already dying. And I was so scared that the one person that I loved the most was going to die. So I'm not going to tell you whether they died or not. I did continue with the book, but I don't want to give any spoilers at all for any of it. So I did continue and I finished the book, and it was a fantastic ride. And I am so thankful to have someone to do it with, because I would have quit many times along the way if I had been reading the series on my own. But to have it all completed is just a wonderful accomplishment, and I'm so happy about it. Now, let's talk about In Death. Remember how I said I wanted to read From Kindred to Desperation in Death? Okay, well, I already started these in November. There was nothing that said I had to wait until December. I just want to get them finished in the month of December. So I actually finished 3 of them in November. So I read Kindred in Death. I read Missing in Death, which was a novella. Yes, and then I read Fantasy and Death. So Kindred and Death, I'm not going to go into depth about what all of these were, but Kindred and Death was so sad. It was a police officer who had just been promoted, and he and his wife went away on vacation, and they came back, and their 16-year-old daughter had been brutally killed and victimized in many ways. And Eve had to solve the case. In Missing in Death, this one was actually kind of cool. They were on the Staten Island ferry, and a woman went into a bathroom, even though it was marked do not enter or cleaning in progress or whatever. Anyway, there was a sign on the door. She went in anyway to try to quickly go to the bathroom, and there was a body on the floor with blood all around it and a man standing over her, and that was the last thing she saw. And then she turns up like an hour later, and she just has a bump on her head and she can't remember anything. And there was a lot of blood in the bathroom that they found, but they didn't find anything else, and the blood was not hers. And so they had to figure it out, and it was really cool how they did that in a really short period of time. Eve and Peabody are on the Staten Island ferry trying to solve a murder. It was pretty funny. Then Fantasy and Death was about a video game creator group. There were 4 people in this group, and they created a video game that is like an immersive VR kind of situation. This whole thing is set in 2060, so it's a little more than just VR, but it seemed like a really cool concept, and they actually talked about the game and the things that you do inside the game, because the murder takes place in the game. Like, he's killed in the game, but also he dies in real life. So they're trying to solve that, how he died, but no one could have gotten into his secured apartment. So that one was kind of cool as well. And that's it. I'm just moving right along. I'm currently reading Indulgence in Death, and I'm going to be doing daily updates, which there should have already been one up before this video, and there'll be another one tomorrow, and you'll see how I'm going on my December in Death. But I had a great November. There may have been other things that I read. Like, I'm pretty sure that I listened to other things and maybe read other things, but these were the important ones that I wrote down, apparently. I'm going to do a better job in December of tracking the books that I actually finished so that I can talk about all of them in my wrap-up at the end of the month. But until then, you guys, let me know what you're reading this month, or what you're reading right now this week, or what your favorite thing was from November that you read. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.